Good evening. This is Hannah Klein. Welcome to my podcast, Hannah Klein's Time. Before starting my podcast, I would like to ask you to subscribe to my Substack. No, it's Hannah Klein's Stories .substack.com. It's $8 per month, and if you pay yearly, it's $80. But anyway, I would like to, you know what? It's very depressing. I have been very busy and, I just had to do so many things. And I could not do my solo Substack for a long time. I have invited a couple of guests. I really wanted to, especially Leonard Grandstein, who, sent me his book about, moving. Not moving because, Israel has recognized Jerusalem as capital in 1980 under the law. But President Trump, finally, recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. You know, there are a lot, that, I really would like to speak, but you know what? I do have time limits on the solo podcast. But today, I don't know what to say on this. If you look at the Japanese politics, it's pretty depressing what's going on. But anyway, first, before discussing the topics, I would like to mention that on October 15th, I will have an exclusive guest, Ambassador Mike Huckabee, on my podcast. I am very fortunate and I feel very honored that, I will have him on my podcast. It's very, very, exclusive for me, special, and it has a lot of meanings. But anyway, please listen. Okay, please don't miss October 15th. That's for sure. But anyway, I will have a lot of episodes before that and after that, of course. But yeah, you can't miss that. But anyway, the first topic I mentioned is Prime Minister's race in Japan. Well, I got a message, right after this resignation of Prime Minister Ishiba, finally, I got a text message, who is going to be, winning as the Prime Minister of Japan? Is it Takaichi? Well, yeah, he was expecting, I commended her actually to him, and, he thought that, she would be very good. And I still think that she's a very suitable woman. And, she is a woman. And I think that it's high time Japan had a strong female leader. This difficult time. I first heard her, a speech, the last time especially. What she was saying was so true because the economy was collapsing. And this time she's talking about it. Exactly what the problem is. She's not name calling other people. She's not trying to destroy other candidates because of the what? Like the hooligan or well, she's not just trying to destroy others. She's a very cordial woman, and I really like her. But, it's very like, I mentioned, like Motegi, son, he is like I would say, probably like if I were to pick two, I would say either Takaichi or Motegi. But um I know what's going on, and probably it's time to talk about it. Um it's what the problem is that Kishida, it started with Kishida. You know, after Prime Minister Abe, and especially after he was assassinated, there was no one who controlled Kishida. And he was out of control. He was a power grabber. He destroyed economy. He loved taxing people. He collected tax, and what he said was that, oh well, like there was like a tax income more than enough, so we will be giving the tax away, the extra amount, to foreign country. Wow. And there's no such room for that for Japan. I mean, it's not being mean or something, but there is no room for Japan to do such donations. And why is he deciding, taking, money like a thief from the people of Japan and giving it out like a bribe or something, Like I will call it that way. No, it sounds like that. He is giving out bribes to other countries, wars, funding wars too. And, he supported Biden, right? And, he thinks that Biden's, policy towards Ukraine was right? I mean, it cannot be right, for sure. And it could not be right. And I started to criticize, it was Biden's policies towards Ukraine, including Secretary Blinken. I'm sorry to say, like both two failed. And National Security Advisor, I don't know. I don't care about his excuses. You know what? All these people made decisions for their own. And I'm just appalled. Like what does it mean by, $50 billion missing, in Ukraine? We did not receive it, or whoa. I mean, and also, this provocative, discussion that I heard on a podcast, which was hosted by a former, U.S. diplomat. I was listening to it because, whatever. But, he was talking about the European nations getting oil and gas from purchasing, which means purchasing gas from Russia right now. You know what? They're purchasing. They're depending on energy even now. Germany, France, whatever. I mean, all these countries need to depend on Russia for energy. And they're paying for the war. You know what? I don't care, what all these people say, really. And I mean, and I do not really understand, these people who say like kill, kill, kill all the Russians or kill, kill, kill Ukrainians. Like basically, I do not like such slogans. And I just I will not, I will refrain from mentioning, but Putin for sure. I mean, if the article on the Wall Street Journal were true, which means that Ukraine is going to get long range missiles to attack Moscow directly. If they were to succeed, they need to kill Putin for sure. And if this story is not true, then I'm sorry, I don't know what's going to happen now because I don't want to talk about it really. But I'm really sorry for what's happening in Ukraine. But at the same time, I feel bad, about those people who don't even mean to fight against Ukraine and are deployed. And there are such people. But, I don't really like, all these propaganda, I have been listening all through, I have been listening to propaganda for a very long time, but, since 2022, the camp propagandas, I see, propagandas from many sides. I will say just many sides because I don't want to mention. But anyway, I listened to the peace process of President Trump. Prime Minister Netanyahu is in the United States and, met with President Trump. President Trump is very compassionate towards the hostages' families. And, he feels terrible, really, for the victims of October 7th. And he really cares about Israel, as, I will probably mention about anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism is, not just minor, but, the reason why, I have to say this, but the reason why the vast majority of the Japanese, what, I talked about this off the record with someone who really know about all these topics. And I know the anti-Semites, in the academic field as well. And so I have to say that the anti-Semites, the anti-Semitic, ideology, which is like the Jewish people control the financial market. It's not true. I mean, it's not true. But, the reason, the vast majority of the people, the Japanese, it's not because, they believed, right directly through Soviet propaganda. Oh, they of course heard Soviet propaganda, but, one of the major reasons that, and, the background idea is that, the Jewish American, banker, Jacob Schiff, he funded for Japan to win against Russo-Japan War. When Japan was, just industrializing, which means no industry, and, it was, it started on February 8th, 1904, ended on September 5th, 1905. Japan had a lot of casualties, but this war had to end with victory for Japan. That's for sure. And one of the reasons, Japan had to occupy, the neighboring areas of Russia is that Russia always tries to invade into Japan. And right now, Putin, he was offering the peace deal, towards Japan, and Japan is rather on the safe, side because of the U.S.-Japan alliance. It's very hard for Putin to invade. And I think it was, actually the legacy of Kishi, Prime Minister Kishi, who is the grandfather of Prime Minister Abe. And so, I really think that, there is a peace. And for Israel, the nation as a whole, like, no invasion, from the neighboring region, and also, I guess, that friendly relationship with the neighboring region. No. That's something I really, really pray for about Israel. And, I really think that, it's not time to criticize President Trump. And actually, I would like to mention, Ambassador Yamagami Shingo, he was the ambassador to Australia. Ambassador of Japan to Australia. And, he posts a lot of interesting opinions. And I purchased his book and read it in like 2 hours or something because it was so interesting. And, it was like, about the current, the real problem, which is the power grab by Kishida and Ishiba. And I did not expect Ishiba to be this far power grabber. And I was just so surprised. He wanted to be, persistent in staying in the position of the prime minister. This whole process. And there's no word for it. Because, he also destroyed economy. He bribed, the neighboring, the other countries as well. Like all these, pro-China policies that he has, and I don't know what they're doing, but Japan is screwed up, as I said, because basically, like, Japan is stuck with China economically. China is now threatening Japan. Something like, just don't tread with us, blah, 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 right? Over Taiwan. I would say that, I basically, I have friends from both sides, various political opinions. And, I really, it's very complicated, but I don't think that, China has rights to, do forced labor, against, like, Uyghur, people. It's terrible, what they're doing. And, against Taiwan as well. They are threatening Taiwan the whole time. But anyway, like, we have, and this Ishiba and and Kishida both are pushing for the cool guy, Everything has to be cool, like this Koizumi. You know, he is just out of the question. Like, well, first of all, he did all the wrong policies towards rice, and now the price is like soaring, and inflation is 3%. No, it's not true. This is something that economists said in the news, which is all lie. Like 3,000 items are, basically people have to pay like a lot for the daily use, like I guess like food, beverage, car, whatever. Like, what the fuck is this? And, Japan is now out of resources. And also, I don't think that it's the right timing to invest to nations which was a former communist nation in Asia. But many companies do because of high risk, high return, all these things, investment. But it's very, very dangerous to do it because of the situation right now. You know, their economy could be dominated by China anytime. By the way, I have to talk about this. There has been credit card frauds, like something like, it's not just, I don't think that credit card frauds are something like just, used, other credit card without, authorization. But, if you are overcharged, that's a credit card fraud. And also, if, I have to say that, like, if, okay, there are many companies that make homepage with AIs. However, it's a fraud if it's legally fraud to advertise themselves with fake I have to say like rewards that do not exist. I explain all these things to for example credit card companies, as I had all these like strange things happening, and it was like, they don't understand all these situations, and something like, I usually with trustable companies, or online, whatever, organization that, provide service to certain customers. They pay back. They send email. If I chat with someone, there is a transcript all the time sent to my email, like the whole conversation, the list of conversation, so that there's no misunderstanding, and I can also go back to what I said. This is a trustable, like WordPress does it. You know, it's not, WordPress. I have to say that there is a good point, there's a bad point, but overall, like they do not overcharge people like like some companies do. But obviously, I have to say, be careful of companies that use DeepSeek, which is Chinese AI. They will look for anything, and also they go over people's information, and they do all these bad things. But anyway, For example, it's very difficult for me to explain in Japanese in some circumstances because of cultural differences. Uh, I am Japanese, but I speak English very often. And what happens is that, for example, like, if I, say something like I said, you know, I'm sorry, but I would like to cancel the service, which is I'm canceling service. Okay. This is not I want to. Okay. Just culturally, understand. The Japanese don't seem to understand this part. But I would like to, means that I don't need you, okay? And I would like to cancel the service. And the credit card company, for example, says something like, well, you did not exactly say I will cancel. Well, I did say that too. And then, what happens is that, they just, whatever, they erase all the chat history of, I am going to cancel the service and, I would like to cancel service. And there's no reply. And, this credit card company allows there's no reply. If there's like, you have to keep trying. What happens if I have to keep trying for a month over cancellation, and during the time I'm charged over $1,000. This is crazy. Okay, I just don't understand the credit card company's policies on this, and they need to be responsible on some of the issues because like obviously, if I cannot speak to, for example, there's a circumstance like this, it, okay, this is a fraud case, real. If I cannot speak, don't know a woman, she takes money, for example, doesn't give, me back, which is ridiculous. But this happens, like Michelle something, whatever, who lives in Colorado or something. She's American and I don't know what to do with this thing. Okay, this is not under Japanese jurisdiction. She's not Japanese, which means that, she's under the US jurisdiction. And, all these, overseas frauds, well, like even the Japanese, are based in, for example, Philippines and do all kinds of frauds like this. So now the economy is bad and the frauds are taking money from people. And, Kishida recommended this NISA, which is system for, minor investments. You know what? I thought that it was like a theft of like, like fake policy that was promoted by the government or something. I thought it was crazy. But anyway, be careful of some of like the currency. I have to say that like Bitcoin, for example, or other, majorly Bitcoin, be careful. I will recommend you to be careful because I don't do trading like this, and I don't do any of the trading, to be honest. But some of the heinous like fraud, which is on, X, for example, asks how to use all these, websites, like they instruct blah, 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 and, just pay for something. They say all these things, and I have read many cases like this in the newspaper, and also there are some people, many people, who are pretending to be IDF soldiers, who are deployed to Gaza, no money and no food, right? I mean, and I'm mom's boy, and like I'm using my mother's, what? My mother's bank account. It's frozen because she's um kidnapped. This story is not even funny. It makes me furious in a way because of the difficulty the real hostages are facing. It's not even funny. I hope that these frauds are caught, really, seriously. And they're like usually not in Israel, but outside Israel for sure. And they are anti-Semites, really. And it's just unbelievable, beyond belief that all these frauds are allowed, in Japan. It's somewhat, allowed. Like, and there is a number that I have to register when I do trading, usually, right? In Japan. I mean, I'm not asking you, but you have to do it. And it's, legally required. And like for example, like I have I can mention this because there was a mention from an official organization that monitors the activities of some of the websites, which is bitcoin.com. This website, I have no idea, but they are allowed on Google Pay, various credit cards, but limited, I have to say. And what they ask for is, like, for example, passport or something, and or only driver's license. You know what? You cannot buy Bitcoin only with a driver's license or a passport and do trading. If you do trading, you have to register a number and do legitimate trading, especially, like, market trading, then you have to do it. And like for, the trustable, well, I have to say that there is a trustable, trading, place like Bitflyer, which is Japanese, website, that cares and monitors the activities of the frauds the whole time better than bitcoin.com, which, like that, this website is like allowing the frauds to use it, especially the anti-Semites. But anyway, that's like, real anti-Semites and just using the opportunities just to gain up, themselves. But this is allowed. I mean, this in this society. By the way, this is not in the topic, but I have to mention about one thing, which is like, now the Japanese society is, well, like, it's the policy, women should have more children. It's fine. But you know what? Mothers without, the single mothers should be, supported as well. And also, I do not like the fact that orphans are mistreated in this society. And at the same time, I do not like the fact that, only women who have children are somewhat like, getting support. But I understand in a way. It's not because I'm jealous, because I don't have any children, but the reason why I'm saying is that these women, you know try who are very ignorant, try to have 3, 4, 5 children because of the policy. And what are these women having children for then? You know, I mean, it's a blessing to have children. I have to say this. However, um, the educational system in Japan, it's basically so cramming. I am just so disgusted, and I don't understand all these system. However, there are certain good sides, of course, and I believe that at least children should be able to understand Japanese. You know what? I speak English basically, but their Japanese level is so bad. These junior high kids or high school children, they don't write kanji, or they don't know certain manners of the expressions. Um, I, um, I really, have to question why the society wants children. I believe that education is a very important part of raising children, because schools, that is the place where children spend most of the time. And the level of public schools, it's like, what is going on? Like, you look at, like, the junior high school textbooks at junior high school, and it's like the letters, which means the words, the letters are so big. No words on this. But if children are not given education, it's one of the responsibilities of the parents to give a proper education to the children. But I have so much concern, so many concerns, because there are mothers who leave children in the car during summer. I mean, what happens when the now, like, the outside degrees is like 30 degrees Celsius, and they leave children inside the car? What happens? Of course, they die. You know, I mean, these mothers cannot think of the consequences of their actions, which is very scary to me. So I really, really, I don't understand how the society is now functioning, really. And the senior citizens are like, like, just, they're like trashed. I just, I have done volunteers for the senior citizens, like the elderly people in care houses. I mean, it's, you know what? It's not, you know, don't do it just because you need to do some volunteers to get into your university. But it's a voluntary act for people, as a person. I really have to say this. And if you do some good, it's one blessing. It's like religion, but I believe that good behaviors lead to something much better. And so, like, I just don't understand all these, people, just having children for the purpose of like lowering tax. They need to be serious about children's education, and at the same time there are so many cram schools, YouTube channels which lie about like the whole like information. There's so much disinformation on social media or YouTube, but people believe it. There are even cram schools that, that make people believe, like you have to write a lot of, they depend on, memorizing, right? I really, really don't depend on memorizing, but I'm really good at it, probably. And I didn't learn it by cramming. But anyway, I hope that, these financial frauds are, just just thrown out with cybersecurity, but the economy first of all, is collapsing in Japan, and I have grave concern. And this Koizumi, I know that he is using his father, and I don't like his father because his father decreased, his father had a policy to promote this katakana word, you know, introducing more katakana word, and he reduced a lot of Chinese characters. No, which is, he says like, it's not for daily use. I don't like him for many reasons because a lot of people think that he's a lion Koizumi. So now, if he is really the first place in the poll, I will just say you guys are just getting so much influence of the propaganda now in Japan. Japan is not supposed to have propaganda, but you know what? He's using one of the marketing strategies, which is illegal. But I'm not asking people to attack Koizumi. However, there has to be fair vote, and there hasn't been fair voting, and there wasn't. The last time the vote was terrible. I couldn't believe what just happened. And the reason why Ishiba won. And what Ishiba did was power grabbing. And I was so disappointed at what was happening to the woman, who lost her husband. I understood, I just felt, I will not mention, the name of the woman, but what I felt was that, her husband served for the country. It did not matter the salary, but I thought that she needs to be, she needs compensations, so that, her, there is support, at least decent support from, and compensation by the nation. And there was compensation by the nation, paid for her husband. And I was kind of satisfied after that. I did sign a signature, but I was satisfied. I did see, her husband, how he was depressed. And, I mean, she must have had a very hard time, but, Ishiba used her to promote himself. And, I mean, he cannot do such a thing. That's a very, very terrible thing to do. So, I don't think that Ishiba is a pacifist. Kishida is a pacifist. And now, if Koizumi Jr. becomes, the prime minister, he is planning to, have Kishida and even Suga back in the position of the minister. And it's like, so, basically, they don't care about the people and they're doing for their own. But anyway, yeah, I just, I did not have time to mention Ambassador Yamagami's policy. However, it was very surprising. Oh, he commends, uh, President Trump's foreign policy. We don't live in a flower bed, you know, and Japan needs to defend itself, basically. And we cannot necessarily, depend on the United Nations. We see like the bribes, you see UNRWA. I still believe that the United Nations is very liable for what happened on October 7th as well. But, I really like him. And, I really respect him too as the ambassador, of Japan. Such a person, who loves the country, is the ambassador, which is a great thing. But at the same time, now, I can see Japan collapsing, and it's kind of like, I don't have words on that, and it's I don't have words. By the way, I have spent a lot of time in Rhode Island. I will just talk about it a little because I often talk about California, but New England is a very old, place, and I really, really love New England area. But like those who live in Rhode Island, they they say like Boston is so crowded, all these things. But I love Providence, and I loved many places in Connecticut, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, you know, various places, of course. And, I love Washington, D.C. area, but, it's very, very special. Now, if you look at the history of the United States, New England is one of the very important places, I think. But anyway, I talked a lot today, and I hope that, well, there was a lot of change in my life, actually, and I feel much better. So I hope that, you have a nice evening. And, I hope that you have a nice evening in Israel. I hope you have a nice morning, right? In the East Coast, the West Coast. I love American people. But anyway, I mean, I like nice people. anyone, anyone who are nice. So I hope, like I pray for the hostages. I pray for the hostages coming back. I feel terrible. I mean, alive people and the deceased people. All. The entire hostages. At once. No exceptions. And so, but anyway, I hope you have a good evening in Israel. I hope you have a good morning in the East Coast. I hope you have a good night in Japan. Good night.